Harry this afternoon.
Harry, you're the best. I owe you something.
No worries. Go when you are.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm calling this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee to order. For the record, my name is Kenzie Bach. I'm the district councilor for District 8 and also the chair of the Council's Ways and Means Committee. This public hearing is being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/city-council-tv. It will be rebroadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, and Verizon Fios Channel 964. We'll be taking public testimony at the end of this hearing. So if you wish to testify via video conference, please email shane.pack, that's SHANE.PAC @boston.gov to sign up. When you're called, we ask you to state your name and affiliation or residence and limit your comments to just 2 minutes or more, just so that we can make sure all comments are heard. You can also submit written testimony, including after the fact, to ccc.wm@boston.gov. That's WM for Ways and Means, ccc.wm@boston.gov. Today's hearing is on docket 0668, message in order for your approval, authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority statements of interest for their accelerated repair program for the following schools: William E. Russell in Dorchester, Henderson Upper Wilson Building, the Rafael Hernandez School in Jamaica Plain, and the Boston Day and Evening Academy Wheatley Building in Roxbury. The statement of interest describes and explains the deficiencies and the priority category for which the City of Boston may be invited to apply to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. It is also on docket 0669, message in order for your approval, authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority statements of interest for the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, located at 40 Armington Street, Boston, Mass. The statement of interest describes and explains the deficiencies in the priority category for which the City of Boston may be invited to apply to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. So with that out of the way, I just want to thank my colleague, Councilor Ed Flynn from District 2 for joining us today. I know we're also joined here by Mr. Nate Cooter, who's the CFO for Boston Public Schools, by Carlton Jones. Carlton, I'm so sorry I don't have your title up in front of me.
That's quite all right. Assistant Director of Public Facilities.
Excellent. Public Facilities Department. Ms. Alvarez, would you mind introducing yourself as well?
I'm Indy Alvarez, Chief Operating Officer for BPS.
Fantastic. Great. So we are joined by the CFO and COO of BPS and Public Facilities as well. Without further ado, I will pass the mic over to Nate Cooter or whomever on the team is going to kick us off.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And I'm going to go through a short presentation this morning. As you mentioned, we're here to talk about the district's submissions to the Mass School Building Authority. We are submitting our statement of interest, which along with that, the Mass School Building Authority asks for a vote by the City Council in support of these statements of interest. So we appreciate your time today and the opportunity to present what we are submitting. I wanted to put in the context of the overall capital budget plan so that people don't think these limited number of projects represents the full FY22 capital plan. I was just before the council earlier this week talking about Bill BPS and the capital plan, so I won't belabor the point, but wanted to just highlight that this is part of 3 commitments that we've made as a district for this year's capital plan. The first is to increase equitable access for students to predictable pathways to educational opportunities across the district. We're also working on excellent buildings, and the focus of today's hearing is on accelerated repairs and new school buildings, is really the focus of what we're trying to do and showing our big step forward to improving the overall quality of our buildings. And then finally, predictability and transparency. This is really about changing the way we work and the way that we partner with our communities to make sure that we have an equity-centered capital planning process. In the overall capital budget capital submission this year, there's $78 million in capital improvements and district-wide initiatives. This represents the accelerated repair projects that we're submitting a statement of interest for. We're also announcing 4 major renovations to leverage our existing buildings and upgrade educational facilities. And the final topic for today is going to be a submission for the Mass School Building Authority's core program, which is about new builds, brand new schools like the Quincy Upper or the Carter School. We're announcing 5 overall new school buildings that we're building, one of which we're submitting for the Mass School Building Authority this year. Talking a lot today and focusing really on the Mass School Building Authority, which is a state agency that provides additional funding to local districts to be able to do facilities improvements and new school buildings. There are two main programs operated by the Mass School Building Authority. The first is the core program, which are projects covering extensive repairs and new school buildings. The second program is what they call the Accelerated Repair Program. And since we tend to speak in acronyms, you're going to hear us talk about the ARPs. This is the Accelerated Repair Programs. These are projects recovering roofs, boilers, windows, and doors. Today, we're proposing that we are submitting to the Statement of Interest four Accelerated Repair Program submissions and one core building program. I also want to note that we asked the school committee last week to vote on the change to the grade configuration as part of the Mass School Building Authority, though there's no action needed from the City Council on that topic. Starting with the last administration, we really focused on leveraging the Mass School Building Authority because the biggest thing that they do is offer a reimbursement for construction costs based on the overall poverty and needs of a district. Since 2015, when the district undertook in partnership with the Public Facilities Department, and I want to take a moment to thank Carlton for coming and joining us today, and really actually for all the work of him and his team to help support our projects. We've launched 29 projects leveraging the MSBA, and the potential reimbursement from just the Accelerated Repair Program is $41 million for the existing submissions. Overall, including the core projects, which are the Boston Arts Academy, the Quincy Upper School, and other projects that we've done with the MSBA under Bill BPS, we've had $183 million in reimbursements from the Mass School Building Authority. So this represents a huge commitment from our city to both upgrade our buildings, but then also leverage the resources available from the state. This is the most dense side I think we're going to present to you today, but we wanted to make very clear what the criteria is for selection into the Accelerated Repair Program. The Mass School Building Authority is very prescriptive in terms of what they fund across windows, roofs, and boilers. They set forth a number of criteria, and when we submit our buildings to the MSBA, they compare them to submissions from districts across the Commonwealth and prioritize based on need. So while they ask us to submit projects based on a certain age criteria for windows and boilers, they will ultimately look at all the submissions, and their goal is to fund the buildings that are in most need of repair. And this is to help get the Commonwealth caught up across deferred maintenance, in deferred maintenance across the state. We are submitting for the MSBA window projects in two buildings where the windows that are in the buildings are over 35 years old, meeting the criteria from the Mass School Building Authority. This is the Hernandez K-8 school, which is in Roxbury, in Eggleston Square, and Boston Day and Evening Academy, which is also in Roxbury, right in Nubian Square next to our headquarters. And we're also submitting boiler repairs for boilers that are over 30 plus years old, which is the Henderson Upper in Dorchester and Russell Elementary in Dorchester. Our criteria for selecting schools both represented a look at where we had needs in buildings. So we prioritized by looking across all of the buildings and the condition of the facilities. And then we also wanted to make sure that these were buildings that we plan to operate without a major construction project for some time. The MSBA asks us to look at accelerated repairs only in buildings that we plan to operate without a new building. So in the case of the Carter School, we wouldn't have submitted them for an accelerated repair program prior to their major construction project, because that would have been handled when we did the major construction project. The other piece of that is by submitting an accelerated repair program, we are committing to operate in that building for 20 or 30 years, depending on the program. And so this then limits our ability to submit that building for a core program later. We've talked a lot about in the last couple of weeks about lining up all of our buildings so that they know, so communities know when they will be in line for a brand new building. And many of the communities you've heard from are asking for a new school building. This can be a major factor in determining the sequence in which we submit if a building has participated in the ARP program in recent history. Most exciting project as part of this, for those of you who don't get really fired up about boilers or windows, of course, is the Mass Core Building, MSBA Core Building Program. As you know, we've been in a protracted conversation with both the Jackson Man and the Horace Mann community due to a facilities emergency. And unfortunately, we are closing the school facility at the end of next school year in June 2022. As part of our commitment to the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, which is a unique program serving students who are deaf, we are submitting them for the Mass Core Building Program so that they can receive a new state-of-the-art building. We are very excited about this program and look forward to working with the MSBA on it. We will be submitting this application in the next few weeks with the vote of support from the City Council. As I mentioned at the start, the Horace Mann project is one of 5 new construction projects that we are launching in this year's capital budget. It includes 2 new K-8 schools in Dorchester and Roxbury, a new East Boston expansion. Those 3 projects we are not planning to do in partnership with the MSBA. Those will be city-funded projects. Part of this has to do with the MSBA process is a little longer for core buildings. So what we wanted to do was launch these 3 projects in more rapid succession and then submit MSBA for projects that will take a little bit longer and have more expertise needed, a lot more involved in it, as would be the case with the specialty program of the Horace Mann. The final core building project that we've launched or announced today is a new K-8 or pre-K to 8 in Alston Brighton at the site of the Jackson Man and Horace Mann. The Horace Mann may ultimately end up back at that site as well, but we plan to submit to the MSBA next year a new elementary school build in Alston Brighton to help launch the new building process in Alston Brighton for one or more of the existing communities. Again, I just wanted to lay that out there so you have the full context. There's no action needed from the City Council at this time on that specific request. So the next steps and why we're here today, the City Council and School Committee will be voting on the submission of the Statement of Interest to the MSBA. We then submit in June for both of the applications. We submit a detailed application to the MSBA explaining the needs of the projects and our prioritization. In the summer and fall, the MSBA will come back to us and tell us whether or not the Statement of Interest have been accepted. And so that we will come back to you for a vote for appropriation for those projects if they are accepted into the school building program funding. I'll just note in the presentation that I sent over, there's a few more details, both on our overall capital repairs, as well as a comprehensive list of the MSBA current projects that I mentioned on an earlier slide. If I were to put it up here, it'd be a bit of an eye chart. So I encourage you to look at those slides. There's also more information available on the MSBA website. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chairwoman Bach for your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Nate. I'll go first to my colleague, Councillor Flynn, for any of his questions. Councillor Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Bach, and thank you to Nate and the team, dedicated city officials that are here with us working on this important work. I don't have any questions per se. I just wanted to acknowledge the hard work that you're doing, the focus that you're putting on the students and making sure that they have the best physical buildings possible to study effectively. So I'm just here to support you and in your work, and I'm looking forward to voting in favor of this on the City Council, and just want to say thank you to you and your teams for outstanding work and professional work. No further comments, Councilor Buck.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Flynn. So Nate, just a few questions from me. I mean, first of all, definitely, I think we've heard across the city, the anxiety and strong sense that the Horace Mann School needs a new permanent home. And so it's great to be doing something concrete here in applying to the core program. And I know that Councillor Braden wanted me to convey her apologies for not being able to be here today. She had a conflict, but she feels very strongly supportive of the endeavor. I wondered if I could just ask you a couple of questions. So in terms of that, with the ARP program, the way that sort of putting in money for it kind of disqualifies a building for subsequent core building applications, how far back does that prohibition look?
You mean, so what's the oldest submission that we have?
Yeah.
That would be sort of tied up in that? Let me look to see if I have that information readily available. I believe the MSBA went through a shift in how they did their funding their projects. But I believe what we're looking at in terms of our list of construction, I have as early as 2015. So the last 6 years of projects, but I'd have to go back and see if there are others. Carlton, you may remember if there are ones older than that.
Under the new program, no. Another form of MSBA, yes, there were other projects like the Burke, for instance, and others, but it goes forward and backwards. So it's really just a span of 50 years, as I understand it. So there's a prohibition for change for 50 years out. I mean, it can be, which is why we have to be very careful about the buildings that we choose and the selections that we make.
Got it. So wait, but you're saying, so that the 50-year, and obviously nothing prevents us from doing a building. It's just in terms of whether we have the MSBA as our supporter in it. But all 27 of the ones that we've done, we would that you've got on your appendix slide, Nate, we would think those are all disqualified from future core building applications.
Yeah, what we would do is, I mean, we could always do, they would be disqualified likely from any core projects with the MSBA. If we were doing a new build or we did anything that, if we were to take off the roof that we just did, we would owe the MSBA money, sort of the amount that was remaining on the lifespan of the system that we replaced. Mm-hmm. And it certainly would not look good upon us with our relationship with the MSBA. But the other thing is that we just have to use the building for another school. So if we were, or for a school use. So if we were to say, submit a particular building for a new, or a school for a new building, or move a school into a new building, we could then use, we would then be committed to using that building for school. And I think in the short run, certainly most of our school buildings, we will be using for either swing space or expanded space, or different configurations as we start to figure out our planning. But this is why it's important for us to have a really detailed outlook on when we're going to sunset particular buildings. You know, in a lot of ways, the last 6 years, we have been working very hard to get out of our emergencies, out of our deferred maintenance with a focus on ARPs. And there's not been as much focus on new school buildings. And so we're starting to balance the two in our capital planning.
Got it. I see. And in terms of process, so with the ARP, we sort of expect that winter answer. On the core, sorry, can you refresh my memory? I think you may have said it, but just like, what's the timeline there? I know it's like a longer, I see. So it's actually both. So core and ARP, we would expect an answer on both of those in the winter?
Yeah, and the timeline, the MSBA has opened the application later this year due to delays in COVID. So I anticipate there will be some delays in notification as well. But the typical process is that we would get notification of acceptance into the core building program in the fall. And I may rely on Carlton to talk a little bit more about how the process works through. But as you know, probably from following the Quincy Upper and the Carter School project, there are a number of checks along the way where there will be votes from the city council in support of the project, and votes for appropriations to pay for the projects as they go, which usually follow the design process and getting a better sense of the scope of the project overall.
Got it.
And then if we were to find out that none of these projects were selected, or if some of the projects were selected, by finding out in the fall, we would then be able to prioritize those projects and think about them in the submission for our FY23 capital budget, and begin the process there. I mentioned that because I know that that's a concern around the Horace Mann School, and that what we're really trying to show here is a strong commitment for a new school building for them. So I just wanted to flag that.
Right. If the state were to turn it down, it wouldn't mean that we weren't doing it. It just affects.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily mean that we're abandoning the project.
Right. And what has our success rate been like? Because with the ARPs, I have an impression that we sort of, we've sometimes submitted like 6 and gotten 2. Here we're only submitting
4.
Yeah. Okay. So we're submitting 4. And what I don't know, because this I haven't been doing long enough, is how many core projects we've applied for and not gotten, because I only really know about the survivors. So curious kind of what the track record is on that front.
Yeah, you're absolutely right that in the past we have submitted more accelerated repair projects in the idea of sort of pushing the MSBA to fund more projects. And what we were more modest in our submission this year for 2 reasons. The first is just sort of a recognition that the MSBA is unlikely to fund a lot of projects this year, given sort of state revenues. And we're just kind of looking and saying, typically, you're right, we've been approved from somewhere between 2 and 4 projects per year. So let's submit our most needy projects. The other factor that we're looking at is as we start to prioritize, we have done a lot of ARP projects. As we start to look at the buildings that still have old systems, we really needed to know what our plan is for new builds over the next 10, 20, 30 years, so that we don't non-strategically lock ourselves in a place. And so we picked a number of buildings that we knew we would continue to operate as school buildings for a variety of reasons, or where we had submitted other accelerated repair programs in the recent history. So if we did their roof, we're submitting their windows, or we did, boilers, we're submitting windows, that kind of thing, because we're already made the commitment to that building. So it makes sense for us to then submit for the second system. And then for the other buildings, it made sense for us to wait a year so that we can lay out our plan with the city, come back to the MSBA and say, here's our overall vision for what we want to do. The second question in terms of our success rate for MSBA core submissions, it has been mixed, and we quite honestly need to be more strategic in how we think about our core submissions. And, the MSBA as part of this has been asking us for what is our, facilities master plan, as you have asked us and the community has been asking us as well. So, what we wanted to do is with the Horace Mann, because it is a school that is really a gem for us in the city. It's one that we know serves a specialized population and is incredibly important to our portfolio of schools. We felt confident in submitting it this year. And then we will be looking to lay out and submit more elementary schools sort of as core building projects going forward. And when we lay out sort of that, again, 10, 20-year plan for more buildings. So the MSBA can sort of see that we have an overall approach to capital planning that they've been asking for.
And sorry, but we expect to have that before, after, sort of during when they're reviewing this project?
We expect that they'll review this project and respond to this submission before we have fully vetted and sort of laid out. But our plan is to come back in the fall with a proposal to the community to say, here's how we're prioritizing our buildings. And That will likely spark a lot of debate within our community, so we'll probably be shifting it and modifying it as well, so that in the spring when we submit for our statement of interest for next year's core building program, that they can see how it fits into a broader picture of how we plan to rebuild all of our schools.
Got it. But the point is we won't have that broader picture in time for them to consider this. So we've just got to hope that they think that the man is a great option on the merits, which of course we think it is.
Yes.
Okay. And the Tobin's one of the schools you submitted. We did the boilers before. So is it anywhere in the queue for the windows? Are they old enough? Sorry, I'm the one district counselor on this call, Nate. So
no, that's good. The Tobin is not eligible for windows yet. You're right. They did have a boiler, which we submitted in 2017. And the project was probably analyzed more recently. The current age, they do have windows that are approaching the end of their sort of lifespan, and eligibility for windows is 35 years. And the data I have says that those windows are closer to 33 years old. So it's very close, but not yet eligible.
Got it. And what about, while you're looking at the Tobin, what about the roof? Do you have that all in one sheet?
Theoretically, I have the roofs that are so I have the list of all of the roofs that are approaching a particular age, but I do not have the age of the roof for the
Got it.
Tobin.
Yeah, because it certainly seems to me like given our desire to do this sort of repositioning and given our the idea of doubling down on the buildings that we've already made a significant MSBA commitment to makes a lot of sense on the ARP side. Now, but both of these ones, or not both, sorry, the 4 of these ones, are they all new to the ARP rules? The Henderson, Russell, Hernandez, Boston Day and Evening?
We have not submitted these projects to the MSBA ARP for these schools before, but you're asking if these schools have received an ARP project recently?
Yes, that's what I'm asking. So it looks like the Russell received a roof and the Hernandez received a boiler. And then the other two are new to the roles. And
BDEA, look. This is, I'm fast with operating budget questions. I'm still learning the ropes of pulling up the data on capital. So I need to work on my capital vamping skills.
Well, it's unfair. In a traditional hearing, you wouldn't have your computer up, and so you could just say, "Counselor, we'll get back to you."
That's fair. I apologize. I'll have to get back to you on the information for both of those buildings if they've been a project. I do not see them.
Yeah, I don't see either of them on the list of 27, so it would have to be prior to 2017. Okay, so it's just that with the Russell and the Hernandez, they both, Hernandez has a 2020 project and the Russell has a 2018. So for both of them, we've got a fairly substantial MSBA hook on them already.
That's right. Of the 4 projects, of the 4 projects, 3 of them have been submitted for MSBA projects before. For BDEA, at the Wheatley building, which is how we refer to the building that they're in, that has not been through an MSBA project, but there's virtually no conceivable version where we won't be operating that building as a school, given its proximity to the Dearborn, our commitment to BDEA, and so and other potential future uses given its placement in the city. So we felt like it was both a needed project and safe bet, exactly.
And what about the Henderson?
The Henderson has had a project before. The Henderson had a roof in 2020. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, that's the Hernandez. Oh, no, the Hernandez had a boiler. Sorry, I'm just looking.
maybe looking at the wrong thing, sorry.
Yeah, because from my look, it would be the Henderson that's the missing one. And that's in JP, right?
Sorry, misunderstood. The Henderson is in Dorchester.
Sorry, right.
And I apologize. I misread the data. That building has not been submitted for an MSBA before. This is the first for them.
Got it. Okay. But that one, and so then my question is just that one, we feel comfortable that it would not be a candidate for a full rebuild in the near future?
Yes.
Okay. Any particular reasons?
Both. I mean, again, when we look in Dorchester, there's, and particularly in that part of Dorchester, part of the reason that we're talking about building a new elementary school in that area for an existing school community is the need for space. It's one of the places where we don't have enough seats close to home to serve all the students. So even under sort of aggressive enrollment declines, we would still need elementary space in that area. And so the Henderson, being one of our popular schools and schools serving a high needs, full inclusion population, we anticipate keeping that building online.
Great, awesome. Okay, just wanted to check. And with the Horseman, what's the level of detail of the application? Like, I know it sounds like it's more us describing why we need it than us describing what we would do. Is that accurate? Like, it's more about the deficiencies than?
That's right. It's a justification for the project overall. And then there's later parts of the process which identify what we would do and how sort of alternative design proposals if the project was selected.
And Carlton, what's PFD's role so far been?
Well, I was just going to add to what Nate said. The beauty of the core project application is it doesn't really want you, the MSBA doesn't even want you to really specify a solution. They want you to specify a statement of need and statement of interest. And that way you can say, this is what we're looking for. And then the MSBA will help provide the resources to help us figure that out, which is great. They'll provide an owner's project manager. They'll provide a design team. And so we have the benefit of being able to partner with the MSBA on that journey of what this is going to look like. And we've done that again successfully with the Dearborn, the JQUS, the BAA, and the Carter coming up. So that's great. And we love working with them in that behalf. So PFD's role is we're the implementers, if you will. We're the ones who actually support the MSBA resources as well as providing our own. So we have project management resources, we have design resources in the department, and persons such as myself who help kind of coordinate all of that coming together to make sure that we meet the MSBA timetables. They have a program where we have several modules and we have to meet their particulars, and we work with the owner's project manager to do that as well. So it's a coordinated effort, a large effort, and we are here to support that work getting done for BPS.
Great. Awesome. And Indy, do you mind educating me on sort of what the COO's role in relationship to these projects is?
So in general, we're talking about operations, and in operations, it's different departments, and the two, well, I would say the main department that will be working in conjunction with PFD and the CFO is the facilities department. And we are, the ones who have the care and custody and the maintenance of the building. So to be part of the process and have that partnership at the very beginning is crucial to make sure that we really understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how do we maintain it long term, so that we're not having conversations of we won't be getting repairs for another 50 plus years. In my 48 days, right, Nate and I have become best friends already. In terms of what we need to really provide the right kind of facilities for our kids.
Great. Well, welcome to the team. Glad to have you. Looking forward to more of these hearings. Hopefully ones where we're ratifying our grand success with the MSBA. Certainly, I've got the BAA in my district and had the pleasure of going to the Top and Off, and feel very appreciative of the MSBA on that front. I think I'll bracket our usual conversation, Carlton, about the pipeline and how we're going to, get more of these projects to our folks and a diverse set of procurement partners. I think that's important, but I think we were just talking about that at the Capitol hearing. So more follow-up there. And then I just guess, and we've found, I mean, I think based on the projects you named, I know them to have been successful in this front, but have we found that the design teams that we get assigned from the MSBA for the core program are good about the kind of like working with us on the community engagement side and making sure that the school communities are really kind of in the mix as we think about these spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I would defer to Carlton to talk more specifically about this. Throughout each phase in the process, the designers do meet with the school communities to understand. We've, particularly in the Boston Arts Academy project, also infused student voice in that process. Part of the reason that we think the MSBA will be a great partner for us in the Horace Mann project, with it being, sort of a specialized school community, is that when their designers come in, they can bring on the expertise and ask the right questions of the schools around what are the unique needs of the community, and support us through that process. Because it's not, I think when we start to build and we start to get our own core building project around elementary schools, we're going to state as a broader district what we think our schools need to be, what resources they need to have, with some feedback from individual school communities. In this process with the Horace Mann, we can't assume that what works for every student will work for students who are deaf or hard of hearing. And I've had the opportunity to spend time with them and learn a little bit. And I've learned enough to know we need support and help from some really talented designers who will listen to the community and connect with them on their needs.
And
yeah, go ahead, Carlton.
No, I was just going to say that as the process unrolls and unveils, the school teams are quite often brought in when we have design conversations. I can think of examples most recently with the Josiah Quincy Upper School, or JQUS, where not only is the headmaster or headmasters, the co-headmasters there, Richard and Stephen, but also he had probably a good 15 or so members of his faculty and staff involved in various conversations about what the building is going to look like, how the rooms are going to be used, what's important to them, how they see themselves in the building, how the building is going to be used after hours even, to make sure that there are provisions for community use after hours. So there is a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of community input. We also have community engagement meetings. We've had 4 at least that I can recall with Josiah Quincy Upper School certainly in the last 6 months or so. And we have another one scheduled coming up. So, we're rolling out to the community. We meet with the community action advisors, different community organizations as well. So we are, the one thing we don't want to do is build this in a vacuum, right? Design in a vacuum. We don't want to, as Nate said, assume anything, quite frankly. And so we're very open and above board to do that. The one thing we have is, and we rely on the schools, I was going to say, the one thing we haven't done is had students in this particular project as much, but the schools, so I know Josiah Quincy Upper, for instance, they're reaching to their students to get their student voice. I just haven't seen them at the meetings, but they're definitely, their input is there. So it's a big part of what we do.
No, that's great to hear. Yeah, and like I said, I think I've certainly heard lots of great things from the community about the Josiah Quincy process. And although I wasn't the counselor for it, I think folks feel very warmly about the Boston Arts Academy process in that community. So that's good. I ask because sometimes when we partner with state agencies, the community engagement suffers because we, as the city, are used to being a little bit closer to some of the folks that we're serving than the state agencies are. And I know that in other realms that has been a tension sometimes. So I just wanted to get a feel for whether that created a challenge for us. But it sounds like the design teams have been very amenable to being.
We work with them as well. So we have meetings with state agencies, MassDOT, given the proximity of the Josiah Quincy Upper School to the Turnpike. We're meeting with them, and then the city agencies as well, BTD, Public Works, all those acronyms, we run through them all. And of course, ISD. I had to say that because of Indy, her past. We're always meeting with ISD.
Very important partner. Yeah, and Nate, it doesn't look like there's a particular shift towards, I mean, you do have 2 window projects here. I had sort of thought that the MSBA might go like all windows because of the experience we all had about school ventilation. But there's been no directive from them on that front.
No.
None. And I would just say, I think as I rapidly learn more about capital projects, windows end up becoming really expensive quickly. And so it's, they can do a lot more sort of roofs and boilers than they can on windows. And at times they've not authorized window projects as much as they've authorized some of the other ones. I think there also can be a longer process. Carlton, correct me if I'm wrong, but
2 summers. Right? 2 summers a lot of the time?
Yes. So it's a long lead time. And it has to do with the particular type of construction. You have to actually take out a window, measure the window, then order the window. So it's kind of a, I guess it's a good thing. You don't want it to not fit, of course. So that's one of the reasons why it's just a longer lead item. But we did 2 large window projects last summer. The Otis received all new windows indoors, as well as new windows at the O'Brien, for instance. So we're getting them in. It just takes a while. And we have some other window projects in the queue. So for instance, at the Marshall, we had those, that was 2 years ago. I shouldn't call it the Marshall. It's up Dorchester, sorry. At up Dorchester, Old Habits. And then we also had windows at a school that just went on my head when I said up Dorchester. I'll think of it in a moment. But they're in the process.
The Adams is in the queue.
The Adams that's correct. So the Adams is coming up, right? So we have a boiler project at the PJ Kennedy and windows at the Adams. That's the one I was trying to think of.
Got it. Yeah. No. And we did get the Otis ones all done, because I remember that there was a conversation about how it might take 2 summers, but we got that all finished.
We did.
That's great. Congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
That's good news. Yeah, I mean, I said I wasn't going to go back to my hobby horse, but the Windows thing, that's why I feel like we need an MBE owned custom window factory in Boston, because it's like on-site work. It's clearly like you can't mass do it. It's perfect. And we've got so many windows. Anyways, so,
we are meeting with the Black Economic Council in a few weeks, specifically around our capital planning and how to do more to support minority-owned businesses throughout the city. And this is something that, many of your other counselors who bring it up at every hearing, so I'll bring it up unprompted. Well, not unprompted because you brought it up, but happy to talk about it because I think it is really important for both local-owned businesses and minority and women-owned businesses to have a prominent role. And I do think there's an element to this where we, to your point about windows, when we lay out, we're going to be doing these projects that allows people to think about starting companies or bringing their companies in to get ready for our construction. So
totally. And I think, and I think we're going to want, we're going to hope to procure diverse teams around the core builds and everything. I just think that like the lowest hanging fruit are these, like, it's like 3 types of projects: boilers, roofs, and windows. Like, they're coming, there's going to be a continued state pipeline to fund them. Like, it just is the type of thing. And people could, that's something that a business can develop crews and instruments for and kind of like be on top of. Plus, it sounds like if we got good at the windows, we could sell them to everyone else. So I'm just saying. Yeah, I think definitely that's something we all should not lose sight of as you're thinking about this capital plan. All right. Well, I've tried to compensate for a few of my colleagues not being here with my questions. I think, though, that those are all of my questions. So I'm just going to read into the record a letter that I have from Councilor Braden. I mentioned before she couldn't join us, but I do just want to formally read in her letter of today, May 21st, 2021. Dear Councilor Bach, I regretfully am unable to be in attendance at today's Committee on Ways and Means hearing on docket 0668 and 0669, a hearing regarding the approval of Massachusetts School Building Authority statements of interest. As the district city councilor for Austin Brighton, I would like to express my support for docket 0669, authorizing the city of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority statements of interest for the Horace Mann School for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, located at 40 Armington Street, Boston, Mass. I kindly ask that you submit this letter into the record. Thank you. Sincerely, Liz Braden, Chair, Committee on Strong Women, Families, and Communities, Boston City Council, District 9. So that's been read into the record. Certainly, I would say, as the chair of Ways and Means, that I join Councilor Braden in support of 669 and also 668. And I will be recommending these dockets for passage at the next city council meeting, which will be next Wednesday, just in time. Yeah, I think with that, I just want to check Nate, Indy, Carlton, if any of you want to say any closing words, and otherwise I'll bring us out.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Great. Thank you all as well. And to you and everyone watching, have a lovely weekend. With that, this hearing of the Boston City Council's Ways and Means Committee is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Councilor. Bye all.
Bye.